Every single organization, I don't care if it's a tiny startup or a massive global company, they all face the exact same challenge. How in the world do you build a team that actually wins? And it's not just about hiring a bunch of smart people. No, it's about creating this perfectly tuned system where every single person can show up and do their absolute best work. So let's dive in and figure out how to build that system.
Right, so what's the secret sauce? How do you build a team that's not just putting out today's fires, but is actually set up to crush the challenges that are coming tomorrow and the day after that? That's exactly what we're going to break down in this explainer.
Okay, to really get this, I want you to try on a new hat for a few minutes. You're not just a manager, you're not a team lead, you're not an HR professional. Nope, you are an organizational architect. Your entire job is to design and construct a company that's strong, that's efficient, and that can adapt to whatever the world throws at it.
And look, any good architect has a blueprint, right? So here's ours. We're going to start with the big picture challenge. Then we'll draft the strategic blueprint with workforce planning. After that, we'll zoom way in to define the specific roles with job analysis, and then figure out how to make those roles great with job design. Then we'll see how it all fits together in a master plan. And finally, we'll make sure what we've built is ready for the future.
So let's start with your toolkit. As an organizational architect, you're not working with hammers and nails. Your tools are ideas, they're strategies. And the three most important tools you have are workforce planning, job analysis, and job design. Nailing these three is absolutely crucial if you want to build something that stands the test of time.
All right, let's grab that first tool from our kit, workforce planning. I want you to think of this as the master plan for your entire city. Before you design a single building or a single road, you have to understand the entire landscape. What do you need, where does it go, and when do you need it by?
So what is workforce planning really? It's the system for making sure you have the right people who know the right things, doing the right jobs at exactly the right moment. And the key things to remember here is this is not about just filling empty seats when someone leaves. It's about looking ahead and making sure your people strategy is perfectly in sync with where your business is going.
And this is where it gets really practical. It's a 5-step process, and it's super logical when you break it down. First up, you forecast your demand. That's you looking into the future and figuring out what you're going to need. Then, you analyze your supply. That's looking at the talent you already have right now. Step 3, gap analysis, is huge. It's where you see the difference between what you'll need and what you have. Based on that gap, you create an action plan. Maybe you need to hire, maybe you need to train people. And finally, you monitor and evaluate. Because let's be real, in today's world, no plan is ever set in stone.
So when you're trying to predict the future, you've got two main approaches. On one hand, you've got quantitative methods. This is all about the hard data, looking at past hiring trends, sales numbers, things like that. On the other hand, you have qualitative methods. This is more about human expertise, relying on the gut feelings of experienced managers, or using cool methods like the Delphi technique, where you get a bunch of experts to give their anonymous opinions until a consensus starts to form. And honestly, the smartest architects, they use a blend of both.
Okay, so we've got the big picture, the 30,000-foot view from our workforce plan. Now it's time to zoom way in, down to the level of the individual buildings. This is job analysis. This is where we get hyper-specific about what every single role in the organization actually does.
Think of job analysis like being a detective for a specific role. You are digging in, collecting every clue. What are the day-to-day duties, the specific tasks, the skills you absolutely must have, even what the work environment is like. And this isn't just busy work. Getting this right is the bedrock for pretty much everything else in HR, from hiring to training to paying people fairly.
And this chart here breaks down the clues you uncover. The job description tells you what the person does. The job specification tells you who is the right person for the job, what skills and education do they need. And then you can go even deeper with task and skill analyses, breaking down every little activity and the essential knowledge, skills, and abilities, or KSAs, that are needed to do the job well.
All right, so we've got the architectural plans. We know the purpose of every single room. Now for the fun part, the interior design. This is job design. It's not just about getting the work done, it's about how you structure that work so that it's efficient for the company and, just as important, motivating for the actual human being doing it.
So job design, it's really this mix of art and science, of piecing together tasks to create a whole job. And you've got two goals here. One, make it productive for the business, and two, make it meaningful for the employee. And when you nail this, the payoff is huge. We're talking higher productivity, better quality work, and people actually sticking around.
So how do you actually design a job that people love? Well, luckily we don't have to guess. There's this awesome framework called the Job Characteristics Model, and it gives us 5 key ingredients for a motivating job. Having a variety of tasks, being able to see a project through from start to finish, feeling like your work matters, having the freedom to make your own decisions, and getting clear feedback on how you're doing.
And here's the cool part. When you build a job that's packed with those 5 things, it directly boosts things like motivation and satisfaction inside the employee's head. And look, this isn't some fluffy academic theory. This leads to real, measurable results. People are more motivated, they're happier in their jobs, and they perform at a much higher level. It's a win-win.
Okay, we've talked about these 3 big tools: workforce planning, job analysis, and job design, in their own silos. But the real magic happens when you see how they all click together into one powerful, seamless system.
It all kicks off from that big strategic view. Workforce planning looks out at the horizon and asks the biggest question of all: who do we need on this team to win the future?
Then, once you know who you need, that question flows right into the next step. Job analysis takes over and asks, okay, for each of these people, what exactly will they be doing day in and day out?
And that brings us to the final and maybe most important piece of the puzzle. Job design comes in and asks, how? How do we set up this work so these people don't just do their job, but they absolutely thrive? You see that flow? Who, what, and how. That right there? That's the engine that drives a truly great team.
All right, but being a great architect today means you can't just keep using the same old plans from 20 years ago, right? The world's changed. So let's wrap up by looking at what it takes to build a workforce that's ready for what's coming next.
So any modern architect has to juggle 3 huge things. First, technology. Think about it. When AI takes over the boring data entry, what does an accountant do? They become a strategist. Second, you've got legal compliance. Making sure your job descriptions are fair and unbiased isn't just a nice to have, it's non-negotiable. And third, ethical design. Building jobs that allow for work-life balance and create an inclusive culture, that's how you attract and keep the best people today.
So I want to leave you with one final thought, a really important question for all of us architects out there. As technology and AI get better and better at doing the routine stuff, what is the one uniquely human part of work that we need to design into our jobs to make sure our companies don't just survive, but lead the way?
Hey, thanks so much for building this out with me today. If you got some value out of this explainer and you're feeling a little more like an organizational architect, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives. Thanks for watching.